to Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and Under the Banner of Heaven. Mormons in media and Mormon land join forces to explore the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in pop culture.
Welcome to the Mormon Land and Mormons in Media crossover episode, where we ask and attempt to answer questions about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints based on things we're seeing in pop culture. Today's topic is Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And Nicole and I are thrilled to be joined by writer, podcaster, internet sensation, Eli McCann.
Hello.
So happy that you're here.
I could not be more happy to be anywhere than I am right now to be here with you to talk about this particular topic.
Yeah. You are where you're meant to be. Yeah, it's all led up to this.
My wife is extremely jealous because she came across one of your TikToks, and one of the stories that, and I can't remember what it was, but you were talking about on TikTok, one of the columns that you wrote for the Tribune, and I couldn't see you, but I was listening to it, and I was like, God, this story sounds really familiar. And then I just was like, wait, is that Eli? And she goes, you would know who Eli is. And apparently she's been following you on TikTok, so she's extremely jealous.
Very fun. Well, tell her hello.
I will.
Yeah, Eli is, internet sensation is the only way I can describe you. You are my friend who goes viral more than anyone else I know. So it's an honor.
What a joy for me.
So I feel like, okay, for today, maybe we should each just go around quickly and introduce ourselves and say like where we're approaching this conversation from. So I'm Rebbie Brassfield. I run the Mormons in Media podcast and an Instagram account where we attempt to cover any and all mainstream media representation of people who are in the church, out of the church, were members of the church at some point. I am a lifelong member of the church. I live in Utah, but I had never watched Housewives until this week when I've seen lots of things about it. I'm familiar kind of with the basic storylines and the women, but I had never actually watched it until this week when I watched 2 episodes that were hand selected by Eli. So that's kind of where I'm approaching this from.
Okay. And I'm Nicole. I am an audience manager for the Salt Lake Tribune, and I married into the Housewife franchise. So Salt Lake City was my first attempt at watching any Housewives. And I must admit, I'm not like super housewife versed like in the other cities. But Salt Lake City through and through started when it went live, and here I am.
Amazing.
Great. Eli here. I'm a humor columnist for the Tribune, and I am a relatively new Real Housewives watcher. I started watching the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City when my child was born last year, and I had paternity leave, and I was like, well, we might as well get into this. And I will say, I've never been a huge reality television person. I love Survivor. That's sort of been my only dip into reality television. But over the years, and I've really not had an interest in checking out the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Over the years, I've met some of the housewives or bumped into them socially. And so that has piqued my curiosity a bit. But then it was last year, I just kept hearing so many people talk about how season 5 of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City was the greatest television people had ever seen. I was hearing about it on podcasts from friends, and all these areas. And so I finally thought, okay, I'm just going to watch season 5. I'm not going back. I'll watch season 5 and see if it, what it's all about. And by the time I finished season 5, I did it in 72 hours, by the way. I finished season 5 and then I was hooked, and I went back and binged seasons 1 through 4. And now I am fully converted, and I am so excited to talk about why.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Okay,
I feel
so
like
great.
you need the full, like the character development and like who you start liking in the early seasons versus like who you like now. Like it changes, it flops. It's the character development of this franchise is crazy.
Yeah, I think we talked on our last episode. I had seen a clip of John Oliver talking to Stephen Colbert about it. And he says like, you wouldn't tell someone to start Lord of the Rings on page 460. Like you cannot jump in on season 5. You have to watch the whole thing. And I'm like, I've seen so many celebrities talk about it. He's talked about it, like Jennifer Lawrence has talked about it. All these people outside Utah or even Mormonism talk about it. So I'm curious. I know you guys both said you haven't watched like every Housewives franchise, but do you have a sense for what makes Salt Lake Housewives such a beloved franchise? Like what makes it stick out versus other franchises? Is it the religious aspect of it? Again, I'm asking most of my questions as someone who's an outsider, but like what I would guess would give it, if I'm trying to think, okay, what might make it different? That's the first thing that comes to mind. But what do you guys think?
Well, I would say a lot of what I hear, I see people online talking about why this is the best franchise. And that this is there has been a consensus around this idea that if this is not the best franchise, it's in the conversation, right? And a lot of the conversation I hear from people about why that is the case is this is a group of women that is so completely unserious in a way that you don't really necessarily see in other franchises. The sorts of things that they're up to are ridiculous beyond measure. I mean, they're getting it. This is a series that started with one woman fighting with another woman because she told the other woman that she smelled like hospital. That is how this series started. And the impression that I get is this sort of silliness doesn't necessarily bleed into other franchises in the way it does in Salt Lake City. So it's just episode after episode of just like, why are they fighting over this? Just over and over and over again. Nicole, what do you think?
Yeah, I would have to agree. Like the only other housewife that I have to compare it to is Miami. And Miami is so over the top that it almost just seems like acting. Like these women are, who knows how they have so much money, but it just seems like it's too much. And it's basically like 10 Lisa Barlows. And that's too much. Like they all hate each other, like genuinely hate each other. And as people to their core, it doesn't really seem like they have much substance, I guess. Whereas watching Salt Lake City, I don't necessarily feel that way. Like it is less serious. And I do feel like out of all the other Housewives franchise, like this might sound silly to say, but I feel like they're the poorest housewives.
Yeah.
Like some of, I mean, they're all, obviously wealthy in some capacity, but, they're not, all living or trying to live like Lisa. So yeah, it just seems like I don't necessarily, I think they try at throwing the religion in there, but it doesn't really stick. So yeah. It doesn't really seem to even really dive into that unless it's Heather like talking about her book.
It's so clear that Bravo's intention was the Mormonism will be the hook when they launched this show. That is so completely clear. And if you watch the first season, even into the second season, Mormonism sort of is brought up quite a lot. It's interesting. I think only 2 of the people that are on the show right now claim to be active Latter-day Saints.
And which ones are those?
Lisa and Brittany.
Okay, right.
And the rest of them, a few of them grew up LDS, but say they don't attend church anymore. And then a few of them have just never been LDS at all. And one of the characters, Mary, she leads a different church altogether. And so, but it's interesting. I think what ended up happening is the producers thought, well, people will watch the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City because they'll be interested in the Mormonism of it all. And Heather in particular really tried to make Mormonism a big part of her story. But it turned out the Mormonism was honestly the least interesting thing about the show. They just happened to cast really fascinating human beings and put them together. And these people are willing to show up and perform in the most hilarious way. And so it seems like the Mormonism has just sort of faded from the program. Rebbie, the 2 episodes you watched, was Mormonism really referenced in those episodes?
No, it wasn't, but it was like, okay, so I watched the Jen Shah episode, the episode where Jen Shah gets arrested for committing wire fraud, right? And like, just first off, like the hubris required to enter into a reality TV show while you're committing fraud needs to be studied. But there was a moment where like, okay, all the girls are finding out she's been arrested. They're driving, they're in like some limo driving to Vail to a girls' trip. and they're sitting there getting this news on their phones, and they're like trying to, say like, oh yeah, so what does, subpoenaed mean or whatever. They're like trying to break down all these things that are happening to her. And they're like, did you suspect? And someone says, well, I never figured out how her lifestyle matched up to what she did, and then I think it's Heather who says like, well, in the Bible, it says it's harder for a rich man to, what is it? And someone else is like, yeah, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. And I was like, okay, that was like, just felt like it came out of left field, but was something that I was like, okay, that's something that like, if you've grown up in the church, there are these like principles or phrases that are just kind of in your mind. So there was that. And then the second one, I watched the bat mitzvah episode, and that was just fascinating because watching like something that feels like, I don't know if you would call a bat mitzvah a religious ceremony. I feel like typically when I've heard of them, it's more like a coming of age party, it seems like. But it was very religious, right? And so I felt, because so much of what I'm doing on Mormonism, or on Mormons in media, right, is like watching, a temple ceremony depicted in Under the Banner of Heaven and feeling like, oh, okay, I feel weird about this. And so going into that, I was like, are Jewish people okay with me watching this? Like, is this supposed to be on a TV show? How offended should I be on behalf of Jewish people that like they used this event as like a place for all this crazy drama to go down? I think I saw that there were swag bags that she gave out at the thing, which was just like, and so it didn't feel like Mormonism came up, but I think that the aspect of religion in general is always interesting and creates tension. Like, I think the idea of Meredith going through this, like deciding to be bat mitzvahed at how old is she? I don't know. I can't tell.
50s, yeah.
Based on her face. Yeah. No idea how old this woman is. But like, I liked the religious aspect of it just because I think, and not just the Mormon specific one, but I think knowing their different religious upbringings and kind of how they, come into play. And I think she even said something as she was, standing up to like recite from the Torah. She gave a little speech and said like, I just want everyone to feel welcome here. Like, Christian, whatever, evangelical, Jewish, Mormon, gay, straight. Like, she's like, I just want everyone to feel welcome here. And so I kind of like that aspect of the show. Again, so new, but that it feels like they're not focusing on, okay, they found like 10 mommy bloggers in Utah that are members of the church, and that's what it's about. So
I think the show would be unwatchable for me if that's what it was. And so having instead just religion sort of be in the background, and something. And I will say though, Rebbie, and I think you'll find this particularly fascinating, Bravo has no ability to explore the nuance of Mormonism. Like it's the worst network for this sort of thing. So sometimes Mormonism will pop up, and the way the editors edit storylines makes me realize, oh, they have no idea what is happening here. So for example, there is at the beginning of season 5, Bronwyn is introduced as a new character, and she describes herself as having grown up LDS. She went to BYU. She got kicked out because she got pregnant, and now she's not LDS anymore. And she's talking to Lisa Barlow, who is active LDS. And Lisa says, oh, my son is on his mission. It's so great. We get to talk to him every week on the phone. We get to FaceTime him. And it cuts to Bronwyn saying, what is this loosey-goosey Mormonism? And that's it. And I understand what is happening here is Bronwyn is saying, back in my day, you only got to talk to missionaries twice a year, and it was on Mother's Day and Christmas. And so now they get to do it every week. This is loosey-goosey Mormonism. But if you don't know that context, what just got cut makes no sense.
No sense.
And I'm thinking the editors have no idea what Bronwyn was referring to. And so it's a very curious edit. You know?
And it's like they don't have time to get into all that nuance. But that's what I think is so interesting about having Mormonism be part of a show is there is so much of this like understood jargon or cultural experience that like just does not make sense when you're outside of it.
This is very true.
Yeah, because Nicole, I wanted to ask, because coming into this series, this was kind of like your first exposure to members of the church, right?
Yes. Well, it is definitely why it piqued my interest is like, it was around the time that my now wife was on a nursing assignment in Ogden. So that she was learning about it, relaying, little information and this and that. But and we talked about this, I believe, on our very first episode. Heather is how I learned what the celestial kingdom is.
Yeah.
So that got a couple Google searches from me. And then Whitney, at one point during one season, she like wrote up a letter to like, I guess, formally leave the church. And that confused me because I was like, why are we writing letters? Like, why don't we just stop going? And so like that raised questions. And then, yeah, like there's just a lot of questions because even going back to that part about Lisa talking about like her son's mission, like I kind of knew what a mission was and the gist of it just from other shows and documentaries. But yeah, like even just hearing you say that back in the day, you only talked to them twice a year. I had no clue that there were actual rules and stuff like that. Like I just assumed that the mission was its thing, but it's 2025. Like that, that doesn't mean that you can't text or talk to your family.
Oh yeah. It was so dramatic, Nicole. Do you remember this? Eli? Like I remember like all of us huddled around the phone for like 6 hours on Christmas, like sobbing the whole time. I remember like going over to like a guy I was dating, a missionary I was writing, like going over to his house and talking to him and oh my gosh. And I've totally had that same feeling like, oh, you guys have it so easy now. And I'm so glad it has changed. I think it's so much better for mental health of missionaries.
So now it's once a week?
Now it's like anytime it feels like. You can FaceTime, you can,
I'm not familiar with what the current rules look like, but it seems like very, very regular contact where when I served my mission in Ukraine 20 plus years ago, it was we could email once a week. We got 1 hour on the internet to email our families only. And then we could talk on the phone on Mother's Day and Christmas with our families. My mission president allowed us, he didn't put a restriction around how long those phone calls could be, but I had friends in other missions that they got 30-minute, it was a 30-minute phone call and that's it. And those phone calls were dramatic, even the long ones. You would get on and it was just like, I felt like I was talking to people on another planet because it was so few and far between and such little contact. It really
was like
is bizarre.
They went off to war. Like it was like, that's how it felt. It was,
and
it
is
was
the purpose
so
of
dramatic.
that like so they can like be independent and grow up? Is that the purpose?
I think initially it was the cost. Honestly, because I think initially it was like, you're not going to pay. How can you, there are already all these things they're having to fund, like apartments, cars, housing. That's the same as apartments. But you know what I mean? All these things they're having to pay for missionaries. I think it was just like, this is not doable. But now that we have the internet, it's free to make a FaceTime call. And I think they also tried to say like, oh, it is so you can focus.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Yeah.
So that you can focus. And maybe it's just the cost issue. I suspect it's probably a little bit more that families complained until finally the church was like, maybe we don't need to have such strong restrictions on this. Maybe it is a weird look that we're taking these young adults and saying, don't talk to your family. And so they just sort of gave up that fight or, adapted.
Yeah.
This is a random question, but is there such thing as missions for, say, like someone converted to become a Latter-day Saint later in life? Like, could they serve a mission if they wanted to?
Yeah. And there are different kinds of missions. So technically, and they've changed the mission age a little bit. Right now it's 18 for boys, 19 for girls. But I think you can go there are people who, if you get converted and you're 25 or something and you want to go, you can go. I think they cut off, I don't know if they have them like proselyting missions. I think they cut them off at like late 20s. I should probably Google this. But then they also have missionaries. They have service missions that you can do if you, can't do a proselyting mission. And they have missions for like senior couples. So like people who are retired, they can go either, like with their spouse or just on their own. So That's crazy that one of them has a missionary son. That's like very active. Lisa has a son on a mission.
Yeah, so Lisa's been the topic of a lot of conversation around the Mormonism of it all since the show began, because Lisa describes herself as Mormon 2.0. And because she says, listen, I know I'm on TV and I'm clearly not living a lot of the church standards. She owns a tequila company.
I was about to say, she has a tequila company.
Yeah. and she's very loud and she's very profane, and she's, she is who she is, and she doesn't hide it. But she will also say, I go to church because I love my church. I love my faith. It brings so much joy to me.
Hmm.
And clearly she is active enough that her oldest son, I think he just got back, went on a mission.
Wow.
And it was a whole plot point that he filed his mission papers, applied to go on his mission and didn't tell his parents and just did it on his own. And then he told them, I'm going on a mission. I'm getting my mission call. And she was really hurt that he didn't tell her. And I think he said in the show, I just didn't know, like, you live kind of the religion in a very different way. I just didn't really know how to interact with you about this. And it was, for her, the way she described it in the show was sort of heartbreaking for her, because she thought, I'm so proud of you for wanting to go. I would have loved to have been a part of this. So that was, I actually think that storyline explored Mormonism in a pretty interesting way for a Bravo show.
Yeah. That is fascinating. And I'm so impressed by that kid. Like, to do that on his own, that feels like that takes a lot of self-motivation. It's interesting. Okay. So it seems like a lot of the women are like very self-made. Would you say that? Do you think that's a different, like you were saying, they seem like the air quote, poorer housewives? But like, I know Heather Gay owns, Beauty Lab and Laser. Meredith has her jewelry company. Do you think that that's maybe a difference, that they're more like business owners instead of just independently wealthy women? Is that accurate? Or I don't know. Maybe we aren't familiar with enough franchises.
Yeah, I couldn't answer that question, but I do think it is interesting. This is a very entrepreneurial show, franchise. They're all like constantly trying to start new businesses or run their businesses. And I guess with the exception sort of Mary, none of them really married into the wealth that they now have. Like Angie owns Lunatic Fringe, and that has been her business. And Mary married her grandpa and inherited the church.
There's really no way around that.
Mary Cosby is my favorite. It's not even close. Who's your favorite, Nicole?
This season, the past 2 seasons, it's been Mary. Starting out, I probably would have said Heather and Whitney. And honestly, in the last 2 seasons, they've been my least favorite. And I would say Mary has been. And Bronwyn's growing on me this season.
Yeah, I like Bronwyn. Heather is the one I would most want to be friends with in real life.
Yes.
Mary is my favorite, but I hope I never meet her because I'd be terrified.
I say it every single week is, I love Mary, but I would never want to make her mad. I would never want to say something wrong. I would probably just stay mute if I was in the same room as her, and just no harm, no foul.
Yeah. Rebbie, did any pop out as favorite or least favorite for you?
Well, it's interesting because like watching it from the outside, it feels like Heather is like the main one. Is that just because she's been there the longest? She feels kind of like the anchor of the show. She
initially came in and I think was presented as the voice of the audience, because she was the kind of the least wealthy of all of them. She might be the smartest. She's very articulate. She's very funny.
Yeah.
And
so her humor.
And there's different levels of self-awareness on all of them, but Heather, I think, has a higher level of self-awareness. And so she sort of came in being like, let me explain to the audience what Salt Lake City is and what Mormonism is, and do it in a very fun way. And so I think because of that, she sort of feels like the narrator of the show to you. I think she is more of a background player in later seasons, but her presence is still there, and she's still an important part of the show.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like she, again, from the outside, it feels like she must have been pretty outspoken against the church. I also want to hear hear your guys' thoughts about her new docuseries that's coming out that's called Surviving Mormonism. So I guess I just want to hear briefly about Heather's story, and I know she's out of the church. Are you guys going to watch the docuseries? It's interesting just seeing the comments on it, because I saw a couple that were like, at this point, it's like you're harassing the church. It seemed like they were coming from people outside the church. And that's just not something I typically hear associated with her. I mean, it was equally that and what felt like a lot of friends who've left the church saying like, this is amazing. This is going to help so many people. So I'm just curious your guys' take on Heather and specifically the docuseries.
Well, I'll answer first, I think, just as somebody who grew up in the church and is no longer in it. So I guess I've lived, of the three of us, I've lived the closest parallel to Heather's story, right?
For sure.
I have often been a little frustrated with how Heather talks about Mormonism in the show. She paints Mormonism with very broad brushstrokes, which is not something that I tend to enjoy engaging in, even as somebody who's out of the church now and interacts with a lot of people who are no longer LDS. And so it's a lot of, oh, well, you know, so-and-so acted this way because in Mormonism, women are less than, you know, or whatever. And it's just like, okay, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And so I find a lot of the way she talks about Mormonism to be frustrating, even if relatable on some level. I will say there was this scene, you know, she wrote that book, Bad Mormon. Yeah. And there's this scene where she does a book reading. Lisa comes to support her and she gets up on this stage and she reads this passage from her book. I have not read it. But if this is indicative of what's in the book, then I'm a little bit interested. And she reads about being at an airport and seeing a missionary getting ready to go on a mission and wanting to go to this missionary and be like, you have no idea like what you are about to experience. And it's beautiful and it's painful and it's hard. And one day you might have to grapple with it the way I did. And it was so beautiful. And I was like, where is this Heather in the show? And maybe it's just that Bravo doesn't know how to edit that. Yeah. You know, Nicole, what do you think?
That's really interesting.
So I did read the book. I did the audio version of it, and it was good. I feel like from somebody outside of the church, I probably didn't understand a lot of the references. I probably would digest it differently now, knowing more than I did. What was this, like 2 years ago at this point? But it goes into a lot of her background, especially with her, the father of her children. And so that was very interesting. And just her transition of becoming voiceless to having a voice. So that was, I thought, very interesting. But I didn't care to read the second one because at that point I was like... and
she's written 2 books.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And
Worse Mormon? What's the second one?
I actually don't know. I think she has 2. I said that so confidently, but now I'm like...
Yeah, she does.
Okay.
Good time, girl.
Yeah, so I haven't read that one. But when I saw this... First, I heard about the docuseries and got excited just because new content. But then just watching like the short little teaser... I mean... I think everyone's, it's great that she's giving these people a voice and a platform, but I feel like Eli said it, like she paints it with very broad strokes, and it just seems that everyone's experience is so different that it does seem kind of dangerous to like only have a select few and paint these, what I'm going to assume are disgusting stories that could do a lot of damage or generalize maybe when I think every religion, you know, could have, like every denomination could have a series like that. And I think, I mean, you know, so at this point, it kind of seems like, I don't want to say beating a dead horse, but it's just kind of like, okay, like we know it exists. Do we necessarily need to go this in depth?
Yeah. And that is so interesting to me. I did my last episode with this woman who has an Instagram account called Women on the Stand. And she's all about like advocating for more visibility and, you know, just better situations for women in the church. So this has been on my mind a lot since I've, you know, been seeing what Heather's doing. There's also, have you guys been getting, I don't know if my algorithm is just so specific, but I'm getting ads for this. It's like an NBC, I want to say, docuseries about another woman who the whole thing is like, I grew up Mormon and I was in a miserable marriage and I had to leave my marriage because I was a trad wife and it was oppressive. And I'm like looking at all these narratives and it's like, okay, what is the line between what kind of media is helpful? What kind of media is like, I don't know if helpful is even the word, but is it curious, or does it have an agenda? And if it has an agenda, is that fine in some cases? Because what Women on the Stand is doing, she has an agenda, right? But she's doing it in a way like she's so curious and open and just like wants to tell so many stories. And so it's just been interesting to watch my own reaction seeing these other two documentaries. And because two things are true, right? It's like, one, it's horrible that that bad things happen to people in the church. Two, if this woman's husband treated her like nothing and then he was a bad Mormon. Three, they're trying to, jump on the trend of, okay, trad wives in Mormonism are oppressed and let's create this narrative, right? But so I just think there's so much at play here, but I also am like, where's the line between I want to empathize with people who are going through these things and I don't want to like sweep them under the rug, right? If it's happening, it's something we should look at and address. But I guess it is just the broad strokes versus not.
Well, this is really fascinating because particularly as it pertains to Heather, this idea that Mormonism can look different for a lot of different people is a major plot point for a few of the seasons, because Heather frequently is so frustrated that Lisa gets to call herself Mormon, but clearly not live the church standards. And Heather will complain on the show and say, I don't get it because I, sort of was not living the standards or whatever. And I feel like I was ousted almost. And here's Lisa on TV owning a tequila company and being crass and then also saying, and I love my religion. And she confronts Lisa repeatedly about this. Like, you're not actually doing the religion. And Lisa's like, who are you to tell me how to live my religion? And it is actually a really interesting back and forth. And I sort of get what Heather is saying when she fights with Lisa about it. And
like
then
she's
I'm
more honest, maybe.
But then I'm also like, Lisa, good for you. You're not letting anybody, including the church, tell you how to approach religion.
Yeah.
And like, that's a really interesting thing. And I think it's especially highlighted in Mormonism in a way that you don't tend to see in a lot of other religions, where the rules and the boundaries and the membership that you have to write a letter, to undo, those kinds of things don't tend to show up in a lot of other religions. And so it makes these particular messy women fighting about this a little bit fascinating in a unique way. And so maybe that's another one of the things that sort of draws people in.
Yeah, because there is also an episode where she connects with somebody, when Heather connects with somebody from her family that basically she didn't talk to since she left the church. And I think her, at this point, like, she had just left the church, but like she was just going into how she doesn't have a relationship with a lot of her family because of her decision to leave the church. And yeah, that was probably the first time where I realized of like, okay, this is different. Like, this isn't like, oh, I just stopped going to church with my parents. It's like, no, my parents no longer want to be involved with me because I stopped going to church.
Yeah. I think that is for sure. Like, the stakes are way higher leaving this church than others. I'm really fascinated by the differences and similarities between Housewives and Secret Lives. And I think maybe, Nicole, you're the only one who's watched both of them.
I have.
Oh, you have. So you did watch Secret Lives.
Yeah.
So, and you had said to me after watching a couple episodes, Eli, you had said like that Secret Lives feels so much heavier. And I feel like maybe one of the things you said was because the housewives are like later in their lives. And I feel like even watching these two episodes, it did feel like these women, maybe it's that silliness you talked about. And I wondered if it was because they already were wealthy when they came on the show. So they're not depending on this as their livelihood. Like, I didn't feel like, oh, these women are vulnerable. Like, even Jen Shaw going to prison, I'm like, well, it feels like you
made your bed.
You made your bed, right? But it feels like, I don't know if it's just that the Secret Lives girls are like having babies in between seasons. Like they are, but I don't know. I'm curious. I want to talk about the relation between the two.
I think it's a number of things. I find Secret Lives of Mormon Wives to be a bummer. I feel bummed out watching it. I never feel that way with the Real Housewives. And I think age is part of it. It's like, these are women in their 50s. They're very self-assured people. They are successful, powerful women in their own spheres. And that compared to women in their 20s who are navigating, in a lot of cases, what looks to me, I'm so sorry to be judgmental, terrible marriages,
Yeah.
and trying to raise small children during that. And it feels so vulnerable in a way that when I watch Secret Lives, I think, you're doing this because you have to.
Yeah.
Where Real Housewives is like, you're doing this because you love it. And then I think an additional element is Secret Lives explores some really tragic stories and really tragic problems. Real Housewives, most of the time I'm watching it and I'm like, I think 80% of this is totally fabricated. I just, they're fighting over such silly things that I'm like, I don't think you actually care that much about this. Every once in a while, like a Jen Shaw goes to prison and I'm like, that's real, and Mary in season 5 deals very beautifully with her son who she discovers has a drug addiction. That's real. Every once in a while, these real things happen, but they're insulated by wealth and by some life wisdom and by the silliness that they're clearly intentionally engaging in for purposes of putting on a show that I never feel bummed out really watching Real Housewives. Nicole, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest factor in this is money. Like I feel this way in like my personal life as well. Like sometimes I feel that the more money you have, the more delusion you live under, and the less like real as a person you get. Like it kind of becomes this like wall for you. And that's how I feel watching. I don't necessarily feel that way watching Whitney, but like Meredith and Lisa, I mean, none of them are relatable, right? Like you don't watch that, and I mean, I guess like some people can aspire to be like them, but just like the Housewife franchise, just it's so unserious because of that layer of wealth. Whereas with Secret Lives, it is a bummer to watch it, but I think for me as someone who, I don't know, I've never been in a bad marriage or had a kid or, like stuff like that, but I can see how more people might be able to relate or find themselves in one of these girls where in this day and age versus, like I can put the Housewives on and drink coffee in the morning and just have it on and laugh. Whereas, if I'm watching Secret Lives, it's, oh boy, like what is it going to be now?
It's interesting how relatability is usually a good thing in a TV show, but in this, it's like better that they're not relatable. Like it makes you able to disconnect and just like watch it as pure entertainment. And one thing that is interesting, Eli, as you were talking, they try to push in Secret Lives this whole like girl boss narrative that like, oh, no, we're reversing the patriarchy and like we're the breadwinners. But I am here to tell you that no matter what, I've went on a rant about this recently with Jen Affleck going on Dancing with the Stars. Like, I just don't think there's any amount of support, financial, childcare that make it easy or simple to be breadwinning as a mother of young children. Like, I don't know, maybe if your husband is fully staying home, your partner's staying home and, doing all of the childcare. But it's interesting to me that they try to push that narrative in Secret Lives when I don't really think it is the same as in Housewives, right? Like, and because all of these girls, there is also that kind of myth of like, oh, they just got big for influencing. There's that like, well, I could do that too, right? It's not like they started a jewelry company. There's this closeness, the relatability to them that I think, I agree. Maybe it just makes it feel it certainly feels
well, like, and that theme, by the way, Rebbie, I think does bubble up in Real Housewives. I mean, part of Heather's story is she talks about being a single mom and how she just like felt like I have to be the breadwinner and the mom and the everything, and I'm exhausted. In last week's episode, Lisa has a breakdown. She's talking to her husband, who seems like a very supportive husband. And she breaks down crying and she just says, I feel like I'm doing everything. I am so exhausted. And so this does come up even in the Real Housewives. Yeah. These women just being like, even having the success that they have, several of them just feeling like, but I'm still required to like be the mom and be keep the house, whatever. And by the way, I will say, apart from Brittany, they all do seem like really good moms in this surprising way, considering how messy they present themselves. But whenever they're dealing with their children, I'm like, I feel like I'm learning about parenting from some of you.
Because they're like so strong and self-assured, or what?
Yeah, they're really they seem to have really good relationships with their children,
and the kids are mature. Like these, all of the and Meredith's son is part of a new Bravo series called Next Gen NYC, and it's about like him basically trying to create a name for himself outside of his mom in New York. And I mean, just the way that he handles him, like all of these kids handle themselves so well, and you can just tell that like they seem like good kids.
Rebbie, it would be worth pulling up online and watching the scene of Mary talking to her son about his drug addiction. I was sobbing, and I watched that, and I was like, Mary's kooky, and she presents herself as like an unstable person in some ways. But I watched that scene, I was like, is Mary the best parent on the planet?
Wow.
Because the way she navigated that conversation with him, like saying all of the most perfect things, and the fact that he was like so open to her, suggested that, oh, this is a young man who trusts his mother.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
And going back to Secret Lives, Whitney talked about on Dancing with the Stars, she made a comment where she was like, I want to say yes to everything because I don't know how long this is going to last. And I felt like that was like the first time that like one of the mom talk, like they recognized where it's like, yeah, you don't, aside from Jessie with her hair business, like you don't have a boutique or you don't have a business. Like you're just an influencer and you're making money on social media, which is obviously very lucrative and comes with a lot of opportunities, but it's not, I mean, no one knows how long it can last. And
that's, it's been so interesting, Nicole. We talked about it at the top of this episode. I engage in social media. I produce a lot of content on social media. It's, a way for me to share my writing and whatever else. And I have, in part, watching people like the women of Secret Lives have set firm boundaries with myself that I will never, ever, ever put myself in a position where I am relying on income from social media. I will never do it because it looks so dangerous and it's so easy for your life to fall apart as a result of it.
I know every time I follow a bunch of different types of creators, but every time I hear the creator be like, I just switched to social media full time, I'm like, oh man, like you never know. And while I hope it works and it doesn't seem like we're slowing down in this digital age, it's a world of unknowns. And it just seems like, I feel like it's no different than the athletes who, spend their sign-on bonus and then they don't stay in the league for more than a couple years and they've already blown through all of their millions of dollars. And I can see that happening with some of these people, especially if they didn't save or, put money aside, or if they are the breadwinner, and it seems like a slippery slope.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just, talking about how dangerous it is to rely on social media for income. And this is kind of going back to what I was mentioning earlier, why Secret Lives largely feels like a bummer to me is I might be totally misreading the situation. Maybe these women are just love doing the show, and they really might, but I watch it and just think, I don't think several of you have any other option but to do this. And the Real Housewives women, any one of them could walk away from it at any time and be perfectly fine. And so when I watch them, I don't feel bad laughing at them because in my view, they signed up for this. They know what they signed up for, and they want us to be laughing at them. I don't know that they would describe it that way, but they're like, I'm performing. I will get up and perform shamelessly. I don't have to do this. I am doing it by choice because this is so fun for me. And so I don't have complicated feelings about enjoying that content.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So maybe it's not like the age at which they are girl bossing. It's like the nature of their jobs, like a beauty lab and laser business versus social media. And it's interesting you bring that up because this last episode of Dancing with the Stars in Whitney's, in the rehearsal footage.
I think you're about to say exactly what I told Eli.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay, we can just cut it out. She just starts crying and she says, like, I just felt like I had to say yes to this. I'm completely overwhelmed. Like, I'm saying yes to everything. Okay. So yes, amen to what you said. I was surprised by that because she seems indestructible to me.
I know. But I was telling him, like, her just recognizing of, like, she's saying yes because she doesn't know how long this is going to last. Like, I feel like that was the most, I mean, honestly, one of the realest things. It makes it because sometimes it seems like they're all living in, like, Delulu land, like, but that was like the first, and I was talking to my wife about this. Like, I think like the Whitney from Dancing with the Stars, I wish that would be the Whitney that was on Secret Lives, because it just seemed, and I don't know if it's editing, I don't know if it's she's just had a year of growth, like I don't know what it is, but I even thought, I was like, if this is still going on when this premieres, when the show comes back, I can see people being like, wait a second, this is the same girl, or, not liking her on one show and liking her on the other.
I mean, do you think it's because maybe it's like normal to be competitive in a dance competition and it's not normal to be competitive in friendships? Like, she's a competitive person.
It may be. And I think format and editing is a big. So, Nicole, did you watch the wife swap episode with Angie last week?
Yes.
Okay, so Angie from the Real Housewives. In the Real Housewives, she's very fiery. She's very loud. She's a fan favorite, I think. She's very funny. She can sometimes be really unlikable because she can be so vicious, so mean, high body count hair.
That's
last week she was in an episode of Wife Swap. And she swaps and goes and lives off the grid on this little piece of land with this family. And it's such a beautiful episode. And Angie is so gentle in it and so self-reflective.
No running water. No, has to take the poop out. All of these things that obviously no housewife wants to do.
Yeah, and she comes back at the end of the episode and she talks to the wife that she swapped with, who lives a much simpler life than her, and very emotionally is just like, I came into this judging you. I pulled up to your house and I saw that your kids bathe in a bathtub outside, and I just thought, what kind of mother would let this happen? And then I spent 3 days with your family and was like, this is a beautiful family. And she's crying and she's just like, I really learned something about myself here. And I watched this and I was like, this is not the Angie from Real Housewives.
Wow.
And I like her in the Real Housewives, don't get me wrong. But in Wife Swap, I was like, what a wonderful person she is.
I agree.
Interesting. Yeah, who are they really? I guess we'll never know.
I'll say this, and I'll be annoyingly vague just for reasons, but like I know two of the women in the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, and I like them quite a lot. And when I watch them on TV, they are very, very different than any interaction I have ever had with them. And so I don't think anybody who engages in the Real Housewives would be surprised by this. They are, to some degree, putting on a show, right? They're actors. And I think one of the things that was a barrier of entry for me on the Real Housewives is, again, I watch Survivor and I like it, whatever else. But I was always like, but the Real Housewives just looks so manufactured. And once I realized, well, no, you don't go in to watch Real Housewives as if you're about to see a documentary. You go in to watch the Real Housewives as if you're about to see a bunch of people performing their lives and trying to make it as fun and interesting for you to watch as possible. And with that mindset, it was like door unlocked. I was like, okay, I'm in now. This is fun.
Yeah, because even in this last episode, like I can't remember who it was, but they were fighting over like, I brought you into this, like I'm the reason you're on this show, like, so it's not like how Secret Lives, like they started at least as somewhat of a group, right? Like they have, and while some of the housewives have former friendships with one another or have history. It's not like this tight friend group that, you know, came into this show together. Like Eli said, like it is manufactured to a degree, and you just have to accept that.
Yeah. And Secret Lives does not feel manufactured like that. It's like,
no,
not
but
the same way.
yeah. And
well, I mean, it's manufactured, but it doesn't feel like they're in on the performance of it. Like some of them are, you can tell sometimes in their interviews that they're being fed a line or they're saying,
yeah,
you know, but it doesn't feel like, maybe it's just what you said, Eli. It doesn't feel like they're having fun.
Yeah.
Well, their lives don't look fun aside from their little 15 seconds on TikTok where they can just dance, but their real lives do not seem fun. But I read this interesting column like a while ago, and it was talking about how with Secret Lives, like they are kind of breaking the barrier of reality television of like it used to be so common to like act like you're not being filmed and to have it seem as like authentic and in real time as possible, but that's not the case with Secret Lives. Like they know they're being filmed and they address and like it just catches, and maybe that's why it does seem more of a bummer, because they're not performing or they're not trying to live a life that's not on camera. It's what you see is what you get, and that's not glamorous.
Yeah, they live their whole lives on camera. So I want to talk really quickly about Brittany.
Yes.
Just because, okay, Nicole, are you aware that Brittany, 20 years ago, there was this moment in time where there were these, which you should watch. We should do an episode where you watch The Singles Ward and The RM. You should watch these movies and we should talk about them. They're like made by Mormons for Mormons, these comedies about like very specifically Mormon cultural experiences. And in this one, the RM stands for Return Missionary, another weird jargon thing. There's like this, you know, there's this stigma that RMs are super weird when they get home from their mission. And it's the story of this, you know, guy coming home and just all the awkward things that happen to him. And Brittany plays the love interest. So she plays the love interest in this movie, again, 20 years ago. I had rewatched this movie because I was interviewing Kirby Hayborn, the main actor in it. But then I told Eli, and he was like, did you know that she is now on Housewives? And I just feel like this arc is so fascinating and strange to go from being, so clearly she's an actress, and I now know she's a singer because I saw a video of her singing in church that she posted on Instagram recently. Talk about Brittany for a second, because she seems fascinating.
She also does cameos. So I've seen on TikTok people sharing the cameos that they've gotten of Brittany, and it's like her singing. So I hope, last season she was introduced, and like she was introduced as basically dating some Mormon royalty.
Jared Osmond.
Okay, she's dating an Osmond.
She's dating an Osmond.
She was engaged for a couple days.
Is she divorced or has she never been married?
Divorced. She's been married a few times.
Okay, married a few times.
She is boy crazy.
Dating an Osmond. I'm sorry, that is so specific and hilarious.
She cared, like, my first impression of her was like all she cares about, like she seems like a very, and it's sad, like I feel like if you're only that boy crazy if you seek all of your validation from others. So it doesn't seem to be like she's good with herself, because she has lost her relationship with her daughters because of how she treats them around men.
Oh, that's awful. That's so sad.
Brittany is the only other person in the show who is presenting herself as active LDS, and she is presented by the show as kind of the show's joke. It is so clear watching it that none of the other women like her at all or want anything to do with her, and
they don't even want to tolerate her.
Yeah, and you can kind of suss out when you watch the show, okay, I think these two are actual friends in real life. You know, Angie and Mary are clearly actual friends in real life. I think like Whitney and Heather are actual real friends. But with Brittany, she is so clearly, it is somebody who is being thrown into scenes that they're all like, does she have to be here? And it's her own doing. She is the least self-aware person I think I have ever seen on television. And then now we're learning also, I am so sorry, but just a terrible mother. Terrible mother. And so last week there was an episode where she's trying to reconnect with her adult daughter, and her adult daughter comes and talks to her and very beautifully describes her life experience with her mother. And it's just like, you fully abandoned me to go date men when I was 12, and I had to go live with dad and like basically never saw you again. And Brittany, it's heartbreaking. And Brittany's just like, I'm so sad that happened. And you're watching it, I'm just like, but do you realize that you're the reason that happened?
Yeah.
She
There's
presents
no
herself as
motherly
the
instinct.
Yeah.
Why did she come on the show? Is she wealthy?
No, not really.
She's just like a social. She just has like clout.
Thirsty.
I don't know.
Thirsty.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
What were you asking? Why did they bring her on?
Yeah, I'm asking. Like, I'm just curious how she got on the show, or do we know?
I think somebody at Bravo learned about her probably because she was like begging to be on the show and was probably telling them, I'm dating an Osmond and he's Mormon royalty. In reality, of course, if you live here and you're like, so she's dating a guy named Jared Osmond, who cares?
Yeah.
But maybe Bravo was like, okay, that's interesting. And so they brought her on, and it turns out she sometimes makes for really great TV. So she's just still there.
Okay.
Yeah, there was this hilarious episode, I think it was last season, where, I mean, she drinks, and she was having some event at her house, and she invited Angie, but it was like I think it might have been church related, but it was a lot of people from the faith. It was
Rebbie. She was hosting a family home evening.
Okay.
And Angie shows up with a bottle of wine as like a gift, and I mean, Brittany's like thinks that's obviously, she's like, why would you do this and that? And she's like,
so inappropriate.
I don't know, you drink when I'm around, so like why wouldn't I bring a bottle of wine?
Oh my gosh, that is okay. And I noticed on the bat mitzvah episode that she said the word effing, actual effing. Like, she said, I'm effing 10 guys. And I was like, oh, no one actually says effing, do we? I thought we'd all agreed never to say that aloud because it's too embarrassing.
I think at one point, like maybe, because remember that show that only lasted one season, The Sold on SLC? Yeah. Well, now she's a real estate agent for them. So I'm almost wondering. Mm-hmm. Oh. But like, she didn't talk about that last season. So now she's like all in on real estate. And so I'm wondering if maybe she thought at first there would be some like crossover.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, so, she seems to be the joke.
Nicole, do you feel like Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, what percentage do you feel like it is about the LDS religion?
Earlier on, I don't know, like, because like Eli was talking about her conversations with Lisa, like that was a really big part of that season and was really interesting. But then you can go several episodes, and with her book, I felt like it talked about more, but when little things like that aren't involved, it doesn't really get brought up. Like, it's not, because it's not part of their everyday life.
Yeah. It's interesting how even like Secret Lives now, it feels a little bit the same, where they're like, keep talking about Mormonism. This is the hook. Like, don't forget, this is the hook. And at this point, like, it doesn't feel like it's a plot line to me. We'll see if it comes up in the next season. But I think that is an interesting casting choice, because I remember when the show was announced, I was like, oh no, like, and I thought it was going to be all like Rachel Parcells, and I think they tried to cast some women like that, because I feel like I've seen some like very active members of the church who are influencers come out and say, hey, they reached out to me, one who lived in California, who said that they were like, can you like move to Utah for the part of the year so we can film it? And I just would be so curious to have been in those casting conversations and see the moment they decided that either wasn't going to work, or it was that none of these women were interested. Eli, do you have any scoop on that? I feel like you would.
No, nothing. I've heard the same things you've heard, is that they tried. I think probably it was Bravo's hope initially that it would largely be a cast of women and that Mormon women, and that they could make the Mormon, like them fighting about Mormonism, a big part of the show. And it just, the only LDS people who would sign up for this are going to be not your typical LDS people, right? And so they ended up with the show in season 1 where I think only one of the cast members was even claiming to go to church. And now we're 7 episodes deep in the current season, and I was just thinking about it. I don't know that Mormonism has even really been brought up this season.
No.
Maybe in passing a little bit, but it's certainly not a plot point for anybody right now.
And I kind of love that for Utah. Like, I feel like so often, anytime Utah comes up, it's synonymous with the church. And sure, that's been the case for some people and for some time, but it's not as much the case anymore. And like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how accurate it is, but I think it's becoming more and more accurate. And so I kind of like that it's a little bit more diverse. It feels like they tried to maybe do that with Secret Lives. They're like, okay, this time we're going to get the show with all the, blogger type LDS women. But again, like, I think the people who sign up. And also, Eli, do you think if you actually could just see all the things that are happening with like a very much in the church Mormon housewife, do you think there's a show there if it was hidden cameras?
It's so interesting, Rebbie, because you wrote a very beautiful column several months back on this very topic, where you mentioned, I think that if you actually filmed real active LDS women, it would be such a boring show, but it's such a lovely it's such a lovely thing to live. You worded it better than that. It was beautiful. And I've been thinking about that ever since. Is that really true? Would it really be that boring to watch? And I think for Bravo standards, yes.
Yeah.
But I find the lives of especially young, active LDS mothers to be really interesting, because the world that you are navigating, and I'm calling you young, Rebbie, the world that you are navigating is a really, really complex one. There are several levels of patriarchy that are both associated with the religion and not associated with the religion. The community here in Utah is obviously very unique. We have a very unique culture, and trying to navigate the expectations that are put on LDS mothers who are raising small children is, there are parallels in cultures across the country, but I think it is a really, really unique thing here. And so I do think it is these are people who should be fascinating subjects of television, but you're not going to watch it in the same way that we watch the Real Housewives for that entertainment value. And I think Secret Lives is attempting to be some version of the Real Housewives, and part of why it feels like a bummer is because it's people who are very, very hungry for attention because they need it.
Yeah.
And so if you could find a way to get people who are stable but still navigating a complex society that were willing to be filmed, I do think it would be interesting.
Keyword stable.
Yeah. I know. I'm going to start putting together a list of people we should cast. I think that is fascinating. Not that it will ever happen, but it's just a fun exercise to think about.
Yeah.
Okay. So do I have to watch it? Here's the thing, the number of hours it would take. I'm like, do I just jump in at season 6? Maybe I'll start at 5. No.
Well, I agree. So John Oliver, as you mentioned, said you got to start from the beginning. I will say I started with season 5 and then went back, and I had a great time. And if anything, it was the earlier seasons are a bit slower. Season 5 was a good way to hook me, and then I was like, okay, now I need to know all their backstories.
Yeah.
So you could do that.
I could do it. Okay.
It's also something that you could it's not as serious in the sense of if you have it on and you walk out of the room for 5 minutes, you're going to be okay. You're not going to miss anything groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So it could be I typically use it as my background music.
Yeah.
It's there.
Okay. So maybe we'll just end on this. What is one thing that both of you would say to someone who's not seen the show? What is one reason they should watch it? Or maybe a misperception, biggest misperception you think someone might have about it?
I will speak to my former self and a misperception that I had. I always viewed this as absolute drivel, that there's nothing of value there. It's like eating a can of Doritos. Like there's no nutritional value, right? Yeah. And I started thinking about how a lot of the smartest people I know watch this and have fun with it. And I'm like, why? How are they getting hooked by something that is drivel? Now that I am in it, I don't think it's for everyone, by the way. I don't think everybody will enjoy it, but you are actually seeing really interesting social dynamics presented, maybe fabricated, maybe not. We don't know to what degree all of this is fabricated, but really interesting social dynamics at play. And it actually is, for me, intellectually stimulating in a way I never would have expected.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I would agree. I would agree with that. I definitely don't feel that way watching Real Housewives of Miami. Like, to me, that's more eye roll. Like, the fabrication on that is just complete eye roll. But I would say the number one thing of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City is Utah is freaking gorgeous. Like, the shots that they have and the places that they go, it just really, I mean, every time I watch it, I'm like, I want to go back. Like, it really is just so majestic looking. And the biggest, I would say, misconception or what I learned is that, like, while the social dynamics are so fun to watch and so interesting, it really shows you that, like, no amount of money makes you, like, absent of problems. Like, even if you can't find yourself in Meredith Marks or Lisa Barlow, like, some of the stuff that they're going through or that they feel, like, it's real. Like, and the money doesn't make it go away. Like, they still have to deal with it. So
yeah, I agree with that.
This was amazing. Thank you guys so much for doing this. We'll see if I end up watching more of it. Are you guys both going to watch Secret Lives, do you think? It's in like a couple weeks. Why are there so many seasons?
Season 3 is about to come out?
Yes.
I think it's November 13th.
Oof. I don't know. We'll see. For me.
I wish I could be on the fence, but that'll probably be I'll probably watch it all in 72 hours. So
okay.
Who am I kidding?
Well, thank you guys so much for doing this. I learned so much. I have been fed intellectually. So thank you for doing this.
Okay. You got it.
You guys are the best. We'll talk to you soon.